One of the biggest reasons why sales reps fail is because they fail to lead their customers through the buying process. So I'm talking about things like how we define the problem, things like how we set next steps, and even how we define how the customer should evaluate our solutions. If you are not leading your customer through the buying process, then you are setting yourselves up for failure. My name is David Premer, and this is another episode of Sales Lab Live. Now, as we get into this topic, by the way, as we talk about things like leading our customer through the process, we're not talking about like leading them unscrupulously or like kind of leading them down like a bad path. We're talking about kind of shaping their journey so that their journey intersects with our products and services. And let me kind of just explain. I want you to have a little bit more conviction around why leading your customers through the process is so important. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to share some data because you know I love to share data. This is some great data and research from the folks at Gartner, CEB. And this is published in Harvard Business. And they talk about this concept of the new sales imperative. And what do they say? They say in the old world selling methodologies, right, a lot of the salespeople kind of sat back and were very responsive, right? Meaning they basically, imagine if you walked into a clothing store and you're kind of browsing some merchandise on the shelf and the salesperson comes up to you and says, oh, hey, it's welcome to the store. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'm going to be over there, right? That's a responsive sales posture. Basically, like ask me if you have any questions. And when that happens, whether you're buying a complex piece of software, an article of clothing, you're trying to book a vacation, it actually decreases the ease with which those customers can purchase your solution and actually increases their level of regret. But on the flip side, the sales teams of the future are the ones that are more prescriptive. And when we're more prescriptive, when we lead our buyers through the process, because oftentimes, especially in the world of complex technologies, our customers have never seen anything like our products and services before. They haven't understood the full nuance of the value that we can add. When we lead them through the process, what actually happens is their purchase ease is greatly enhanced and they experience very little regret when they do. Like think about like if you're going to a store to buy something kind of complex and expensive, maybe something you've never bought before, what happens is when the salesperson kind of takes you under their wing and says like, let me show you about kind of the latest fashion, the latest technology. Let me show you a little bit about how you should be thinking about this. You feel educated, you feel empowered. And even if, funnily enough, you leave with the not most ideal product for you objectively, you still feel really good about the process because, you feel empowered. You felt led. You felt more educated. And it was easier for you to buy in the end. So that's what we want to do for our customers, right? Give them that peace of mind, that kind of mental clarity around how we can help them. And to do that, there are three main ways I want to talk about. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a bit of whiteboarding here for you. The first thing I want to talk about as it relates to leading our customers through the buying process starts right at the beginning with what I refer to as problem definition, right? So this is like step number one. And the idea behind problem definition is that oftentimes our customers come to us with problems that are kind of circulating in their head that they haven't really pinned down the root cause of. Again, because they're busy. They're doing all sorts of other things. And I'll give you an example. Oftentimes, like I'll work with high growth B2B technology companies that have lots of young, enthusiastic sales reps. And people will say, hey, David, we'd like to bring you on to do some training. I'll be like, great. What's the problem we're trying to solve? Like, what are the challenges you're seeing within your sales team? And they'll say, well, like we have a lot of like young, salespeople on our team. And again, they're very enthusiastic, but they've never received any kind of formal sales training. And, they're not so great at discovery. They're not so great at, the messaging. And, we just want to kind of up-level their skills. And I'm like, okay, like that's good. But like, what's the problem again, specifically we're trying to solve here? Because I'll tell you, here's what I see, right? I see a lot of young, enthusiastic sales reps who are very well-intentioned, really bright, really smart, lots of hustle, right? But when they get on the phone with their customers and they start talking about their products and services, the customers can tell that there's a little bit of fear in their voice, a little bit of trepidation. And I know this because back when I was at Salesforce and my companies, I would listen to young, enthusiastic sales rep calls all the time. And what I would hear, it's kind of like one of my kids trying to ask me for something that they think I'm going to say no to, like an early morning lift to, to volleyball practice, or like download an app or a sugary snack before bedtime. When they approach me, right, with these questions they think I'm going to say no to, like I can feel it, I can hear it in their voice. And it's very off-putting. And I find with young sales reps, one of the reasons why they fail is because they're unable to manifest this conviction because they're oftentimes selling to a more experienced buyer whose job they've never done. I refer to this kind of this fear and trepidation as experience asymmetry. I have a name for it. It's this imbalance. Is that a problem you're experiencing, right? Now, by the way, like that was like a little vignette, a little scene there for you. But you see what I'm talking about? Problem definition. Whenever I say that to a customer and I kind of explain that story, they're like, yes, David, that thing that you just said, we have that problem. Absolutely. But you didn't bring me that problem. Like when I asked you what the problem was, you didn't articulate that. I helped you define what that problem is. And again, whenever you can define what the problem is in the mind of your buyer in a way that is more clear than they are able to describe it themselves, it's extremely powerful. And that's what I mean by leading our buyers through the process. So that is step one, is the problem definition. Step two, what happens now? Well, let's talk about step two, which is, I know I'm like not completely adept at writing on the iPad just yet, but I want to talk about like next steps. So what I mean by next steps, so coming out of like a sales meeting or a discovery call, we often as salespeople, and we want to set next steps. In fact, the data shows that the salespeople who spend a certain amount of time, a significant amount of time actually, focused on these next steps and setting really good next steps actually end up doing better in the sales cycle in general. The close rates are like off the charts better. But the problem is that if we let our customers drive the process, and I'll give you like a simple example, right? You're talking to a customer and, you know, it seems to be going okay. And you say, okay, so like as a next step, what would you like? And the customer says, oh, David, can you send me over some information and maybe some pricing? And we're thinking to ourselves in our head, first of all, like, that's a bad next step. I feel like if I do that, I'm going to lose control over the sales process, right? And in fact, for those of you who are doing prospecting and the BDRs and SDRs out there, you know that sometimes customers just try to brush you off by saying things like, yeah, this is not a good time. Can you call me back next month? And that's kind of like the next step. Or can you just email me over some information? And you're thinking to yourself, no, like if I do that, like I'm going to lose. Like, why would I do that? And I'll tell you, the more enlightened BDRs that I've worked with will actually come back to their customers and say, hey, you know what? Like I'm happy to, you know, do that if you want, but I'll tell you, 95% of the time after I send you that information, I'm never going to hear from you again. And they actually call the customer out. I'm never going to hear from you again. So if you're saying this just to be polite, it's okay. Like don't spare my feelings, right? That's a good example of being more prescriptive about what a next step could be. But you might suggest to your customers at a certain point in their evaluation process, you might say, hey, look, as a next step, right? Most customers in your position like this idea of doing a free trial or getting on a demo with us, or they like the idea of actually bringing in some of their broader team members to evaluate our solution because then they can get all these great differential perspectives, right? So if providing you with pricing and a demo or whatever it is not something I want to do because I know that that's like the slow road to failure, I can start being a lot more prescriptive in how I dole out these next steps. And if I can dole out next steps that are in your best interest, that help you evaluate, right, but are also aligned with our best practice sales process, then I'm going to be in much better shape to not only help you, but stand a much better chance of closing that deal. Now, the third area there where it's super valuable to be able to lead our customers down this process, one sec, here we go. I'm getting better at this, you see, is when it comes to evaluation. I've got to write this for a firmer service. Evaluation criteria. And what do I mean by evaluation criteria? Well, I mean, the reality is that customers aren't necessarily good at knowing how they should be looking at products and services. And sometimes they'll say things like, oh yeah, so David, like, can we get a free trial of this? And I'll tell you, like, for those of you who have free trials in your products and services, and I've certainly had lots of my businesses had free trials, oftentimes, like, a free trial does not give the customer a complete sense for how that product or service will work in real life. And think about like back in the day when like a Facebook or like a LinkedIn, like a social networking app kind of comes out and someone says like, I want a free trial. Okay. If you free trial Facebook or free trial LinkedIn in a very limited way for a period of 1 to 2 weeks, you're not really going to get a chance to see how the power of the network manifests. Like you'll get a sense for like where the buttons are and how the features and functions work, but you won't get a sense of like the value. And oftentimes people think about like a free trial of a piece of software as like they're going to see like the value at the end of the day. And really, like, that's not the purpose of the free trial. So being able to reframe your customers' expectations around what they can realistically get and realistically expect to see out of that free trial, how they're supposed to evaluate it, is very powerful. I'll tell you another story. For those of you out there who are doing RFPs, right? Oftentimes, when you get an RFP from a customer with a whole bunch of criteria, you kind of look at this thing and you say to yourself, like, no, like I don't think this isn't really suited for us. This is obviously written by someone else. But oftentimes when we're selling new and innovative technologies, and I had this, again, personal experience at my third startup, where we were selling this new innovative way to give people at work feedback, coaching, and recognition. And we would get these like RFP response, requests from companies. And when we look at the requirements, we read them and we're like, this reads like an old school performance review software solution. And that's not what we do. So if I fill this out, there's going to be a whole lot of things that I'm going to just say no to, not because I don't have those features, but because I don't have those features for a reason, because no one does that anymore, right? On the flip side, there are things that we do really well that modern companies need that are not in this set of requirements. And I had actually a really good amount of success going back to companies in this environment and saying, hey, look, I know you said you wanted to solve this problem because we talked about the problem definition, but when I look at your RFP, when I look at your solution requirements, they don't match. They don't seem to read like the modern kind of solution that you were looking for. And I kind of lay all this out, and they're like, yeah, like, David, we understand what you mean. I said, well, look, if a solution like ours or in that category is what you're looking for, then you really have to reframe your evaluation criteria and start looking at the solution in a much different way. And we had, like I said, we had a lot of success in reframing those requirements. So whether it's, for example, a free trial or an RFP, or, they want to do demo after demo after demo, or whatever it is, and that going down this road is going to be the slow road to failure, then you need to head that off at the pass and be more prescriptive with your customers about how they should evaluate your solution. So that's it, right? Like, just be more prescriptive in how you work with your customers. Now, if you're looking for, good resource that'll kind of help you along here, I do have a 2-part article on this topic, which you can check out. I have a 2-part article. It's called 3 different ways to be prescriptive and lead your customers through the buying process. I suggest you check it out. I'll try to drop a link somewhere in this post. But again, when it comes to modern technology, most of the customers that we're working with have never seen, right, the kind of scope and scale and the kind of problems that we can help them solve. And so by being more prescriptive, by leading them, right, from where they are today to our position, right, to the ways that we can help, not only, can we help them buy our products and service and be more successful as salespeople, but we can actually help reduce the pain associated with buying, and we can make them more satisfied at the end of the day. And isn't that, a win-win for everyone? So that's all I got for you today on today's Sales Lab Live. I hope you enjoyed this session, and looking forward to seeing you again next time.